My life was perfect. I had everything: a well-paying job, a loving family, and most importantly, a beautiful fiancée. But I killed her. It all began on a warm, sunny morning. The sun in my city shone brightly into my room, and even with the windows closed, you could still see almost everything outside. My eyes traveled across the room and I smiled at the sight of my beautiful fiancée asleep beside me. Last night, one of her closest clients organized a girls' night out for them, and although she didn't want to, I urged her to go network with people. As the morning sun cast a gentle glow, I observed her closely, marveling at her delicate details. Those long, enviable eyelashes gave the illusion of art, yet I knew they were all hers. Remnants of the night's makeup clung to her defined nose, adding a touch of glamour even in sleep. Her rhythmic breathing made her cheeks rise and fall, dimples hinting at their depth every time she exhaled. Her lips, delicate as rose petals, curved into a soft smile that made me smile too. I brushed a stray strand of her golden hair behind her ear, taking a moment to appreciate its silky, wavy texture. It had been one of the first things that had drawn me to her. How incredibly fortunate I felt to have her by my side. Ariana and I first met at a birthday party. One of our mutual friends, Fred, was celebrating his birthday and had invited all his friends. But as the party went on, I became bored and let my eyes wander for a bit when I spotted her. My beautiful girl singing along to the background music. I approached her with the intention of being just friends, but as soon as I heard her soft, soothing voice, I knew she was the one. As we spoke, I learned she was quite intelligent and we ended up talking all night. When the party ended, I got her number, and soon, our friendship blossomed. Ariana was the sweetest person in my life, and I couldn't help developing feelings for her. I wanted to ask her out immediately, but she was in a relationship, and I didn't want to risk losing our friendship. Luckily for me, they broke up a year later. Apparently, he had accused her of keeping secrets and even cheating on him with me. But the Ariana I knew was an open book. She had no secrets and wasn't even interested in me that way. So being the good friend I was, I stood by and helped her get through it. As the days turned into months, Ariana became drawn to me too. When I realized, I asked her out, and nothing else made me happier. Like a rushing wind, the next week passed by, and soon it was Friday again, our date night. I dialed Ariana's number, waiting a few rings before her familiar voice greeted me.
Hey,
I began, trying to sound casual.
I was just thinking about our date tonight.
OMG, was that today?
She said, the shock evident in her tone.
I completely skipped and I've got this event I really can't back out of.
I sighed softly, feeling disappointed.
Didn't we agree to keep this weekend free just for us?
She let out a small, rueful laugh.
I know. But it's a major networking opportunity. I really need to be there.
A part of me wanted to argue, but then thinking of her aspirations and the spark in her eyes when she talked about her dreams, I relented.
All right, I get it. I want to support you. Just promise we'll make time next week?
Thanks for understanding.
She replied, her voice softening.
We'll make it up, I promise.
When I got home from work that evening, I saw she had already left for the party. I sighed as I thought about her. I was so addicted to her presence that not being with her at that moment felt like something was wrong. Still, I didn't want to stand in her way or stop her from progressing because I knew how passionate she was and how much this meant to her. When I woke up, she was already on the bed beside me. She looked exhausted, and I could tell she had had trouble at the party last night. I was concerned and proud at the same time because it meant she was putting effort into building herself, and in a few years I could boast of a wealthy entrepreneur wife. In the early hours, the house was swathed in silence. I rose gently, intent on preparing breakfast without disturbing her. The weight of her stresses was already too much, and I hoped a quiet morning might bring her some peace. By the time the aroma of freshly cooked food filled the air, I caught the sound of her stirring. She entered the kitchen, her steps light. Without a word, she wrapped her arms around me from behind, her embrace warm and comforting. As I turned to return her hug, an unfamiliar scent teased my senses. A man's cologne, but distinctly not mine. Questions bubbled up inside me, but I pushed them down, unwilling to shatter our tranquil morning with doubts or accusations. Ariana began to set the table, her movements graceful. As we sat, the tantalizing smells from the dishes briefly distracted me from the unease. Yet as we ate in silence, that unfamiliar scent persisted in my mind. Unable to hold back my curiosity, I finally voiced the question that had been nagging at me.
Babe,
I began, choosing my words carefully.
did anyone you meet last night wear a strong cologne?
She raised an eyebrow, taken aback.
I hugged a lot of people. It was a networking event. Men and women both. Why?
I hesitated, then admitted,
There's this scent on you. It's distinctly male and not something I recognize. It's really strong.
She chuckled lightly, realization dawning on her face.
Oh, that. It must have been from when I hugged Daniel and Anna. You know they're together now, so I think she used his cologne. I found it weird too, but when I asked, she just said she preferred using his. It was ridiculous.
She laughed harder, rolling her eyes.
Oh, that made sense.
I chuckled, letting it slide. However, I still had a nagging feeling that wasn't the full story. When I got to work that day, there wasn't much to do, so I decided to scroll through my gallery. Ariana and I had tons of pictures together because we always went out every Friday, our day off. She brought up the idea of spending time together on those days, and ever since we started, Fridays became the best days of my week. Despite living in the same house since we got engaged, we were usually too busy with work. The fatigue from working all day wouldn't let us do anything much, so she suggested we spend the whole day together either at home or out somewhere. I instantly bought into it because who wouldn't? I swiped through the images on my phone, stopping abruptly when a familiar photo filled the screen. It was the photo, our engagement night. I looked dazed, almost entranced by the beauty beside me. Ariana, radiant and ethereal, looked like Minerva, a goddess from Greek mythology. I still remember that night clearly in my head. The shock, happiness, excitement, and everything that came with it. It was a Friday night, and as usual, we had spent the day together. So when I casually mentioned catching the premiere of a new blockbuster at the cinema, she thought nothing of it. But little did she know, I had made arrangements for the proposal to happen in the cinema. As we settled into our seats in the dimmed theater, a sudden hush and blackened screen caused a wave of murmurs. Pretending to check on the disruption, I slipped away, but quietly got on the stage. When the lights came on, heart pounding, I was on one knee with a ring in my hand and the screen boldly displaying, "Ariana, will you marry me?" Her gasp was audible. Her luminous hazel eyes, usually so composed, widened in shock and glee. She couldn't believe her eyes. And when everyone started clapping, urging her to say yes, she joined me on stage and nodded with tears in her eyes. When I slipped the ring onto her finger that night, it felt like a dream come true. We took that picture when the movie was over. Her eyes seemed to sparkle as she laughed at something I said, probably another one of my bad jokes. Her dimples deepened, her eyelashes fluttered, and her perfect set of dentition brightened her face. God, it felt like I was in a scene from a 90s movie, which particularly blew me away because I hadn't seen this side of her before, causing me to look so awestruck in the picture. Ha ha ha, I loved her, and there was no doubting it. The following week, I reminded Ariana of our plans for Friday, and told her to ensure she cleared it up so nothing would get in the way. She promised to do so, apologizing for not being able to make it the week before. We made love that night, and just like that, I put my doubts to rest. Friday morning found us lingering over our breakfast, the hum of city life below filtering through our apartment windows. As I sipped my coffee, Ariana casually mentioned an evening party thrown by an old friend. She emphasized how special the lady was to her, implying it was a must attend. I can't lie, I was shocked to my nerves. We had just confirmed our plans, and now this? Plus, we shared almost the same social circles, yet I had no idea who this friend was.
So who's the friend?
I asked, trying to act nonchalant. She gave a name that didn't ring a bell.
She's new in town, moved recently. I doubt you've met her.
I wanted to probe more, but chose to step back. I wasn't happy, but I couldn't stop her from going, so it wouldn't seem like I didn't trust her or I was being too sensitive. When it was time to leave, I noticed something different about her. She was applying makeup and not something light like she usually did. This was full beat. Typically, Ariana had beautiful and smooth skin. Her face glowed at all times, even when she was tired. She was always so proud to show off her natural look. And on official occasions, she would only apply very little, so seeing her like this came off as suspicious. I watched her for a bit, but she was too engrossed in what she was doing to notice. Every time her phone buzzed, she'd peek and giggle, clearly engrossed in some playful chat.
Ari, is this a special occasion? You seem different tonight.
I had to ask. She was also wearing a short dress that barely covered her body, leaving little to the imagination. She paused, eyes meeting mine in the mirror.
I want to feel good and sexy and fit in, okay?
She furrowed her brows, eyes full with concern and longing for approval. I mean, sure, I didn't want my fiancé looking like a nun at a party, and I clearly wanted her to have a good time even though she ruined our plans. But this, I kept my mouth shut. She was her own woman. The next day, Ariana walked into our apartment, radiating an energy that felt like the first day of summer. It was infectious but also out of place considering she'd stood me up the night before. My brows furrowed slightly, but I tried to keep my tone light, masking my underlying confusion.
You're glowing. Did the party turn out to be a surprise awards night or something?
She chuckled, the sound filling our cozy space.
Ha ha ha, no, silly. My friend just received some really great gifts and it made me so happy.
My curiosity piqued.
Oh, but I didn't see any photos on your snap. You're usually the queen of snaps at parties.
She hesitated just a beat too long, but I noticed.
Oh, that? I was so wrapped up helping out that I didn't end up in any of the photos.
Now that was suspicious. My mind began connecting dots I didn't want it to. I was very sure she was hiding something. No female gathering would ever go by without them taking pictures, and moreover, Ariana loved taking them so much that whatever reason she had sounded too sus to me. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions or make it clear that I was doubting her. So like before, I unclenched my jaw and let it go. The anticipation of our weekend together had kept me happy all through the work week. With the hustle of our lives, it had been too long since Ariana and I had had some real quality time. But when I pushed the door open that Friday evening, my heart sunk. The sight before me was utterly heartbreaking. Ariana stood there, bathed in the soft glow of the room's ambient lighting, draped in a dress that was worse than the last. It was daringly short, its transparency revealing more than it hid. As she turned, I caught a glimpse of her bare back, the fabric ending just above the curve of her hips. My surprise was evident and my voice came out sharper than I intended.
Where do you think you're going in that?
She looked at me, her demeanor cool and collected.
There's a last-minute thing for one of my friends. She got promoted, so they're celebrating.
And you didn't think to tell me? Could I maybe come?
It's just a girls' night. None of the other guys are going.
Ari, it feels like you never make time for us anymore.
She sighed, rolling her eyes.
This isn't about trust, is it?
She paused, as if genuinely waiting for my response before saying,
You're just being insecure.
That word, insecure, it sliced through me. Every ounce of self-restraint I had was deployed to prevent a bitter retort from tumbling out. The atmosphere in the room became thick with tension. I studied her for a long moment, trying to find the Ariana I knew, the one who cherished our moments, who laughed at my silliest jokes, who would choose a quiet evening with me over any party. But instead, all I saw was a woman drifting further away. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I finally said,
All I want is to be a priority, not an afterthought.
Her response was a distant look, as if she was elsewhere, thinking of a different time or place. My heart ached. I decided to talk to her sister about it the next day, and when I did, she told me she was sure nothing was going on, because she knew all her plans lately. Hearing this put my mind at rest. The next Friday was supposed to be the game changer. After the strain from the previous week, I needed, to turn the page. I had set up a surprise date night, pouring my heart and effort into organizing it. I had scoped out a brand new rooftop restaurant in town, a place with shimmering lights and an enchanting view of the city. I gave her a heads up, hinting about a special evening ahead, thinking that the anticipation would build excitement. But as I stepped into our place the next day, all prepped up and eager, I found her getting ready. Not for our date, but for another night out. My heart sank, and a burning frustration took its place.
You're going out? Again? Were you even planning to come with me tonight?
She looked up, surprised.
Oh, it's just another thing with my friends. It came up last minute.
That's what you said last time, Ariana. And the time before that. And before that. Ari, it feels like there's always a last-minute thing. Every time we plan something, there's always something else.
Why are you so worked up? I have a life outside of us too, you know. Why is it always an issue when I want to go out?
This isn't just about you going out with your friends. It's about feeling second place in your life, like I'm always competing with everyone else for a slot in your schedule. It's like you choose anything and everything over the plans we make together.
I said I'd be there. What do you want me to do? Cancel again?
You can bail on me, but not on them? Doesn't our time mean anything to you?
Neither of us was willing to back down, and in a flurry of frustration, Ariana started packing her bags.
I can't do this right now. I need some space.
She hissed. And just like that, the delicate thread holding us together seemed to snap. The next few days passed in silence. I didn't hear from her and didn't try reaching out either. But as time went by, I began to miss her, so I tried texting. When I couldn't get a hold of her, I called her friends, but none of them knew where she was. The familiar sight of our porch greeted me as I approached the house that Friday evening. The sun had just begun to cast its golden hue over everything, and there, amidst that fleeting moment of serenity, sat Ariana, clasping her bags close and eyes wet from tears. A part of me ached to close the gap between us, to pull her into an embrace, reassuring her that all was okay, but my pride anchored my feet. It told me not to make the reconciliation too easy. We'd danced around our issues for too long, and it was time to confront them. She glanced up, her tear-filled eyes meeting mine. Neither of us uttered a word as I unlocked the door and stepped inside with Ariana trailing behind me. Then, breaking the tension, she collapsed to her knees, her voice shaking. The golden glow from outside seemed to dim as she spoke.
I messed up. I cheated.
My heart hammered against my ribcage, the floodgates opened, and every unexplained moment, every dubious excuse poured in. The unfamiliar cologne, the mysterious birthday party, her sudden string of girls' nights out, and the excessive dressing.
All those times, was it him?
It wasn't planned. It just happened.
I laughed bitterly, my emotions spiraling.
It just happened? Multiple times? While we were planning our future together?
You were distant, always caught up with work or some project. Maybe if you'd been there, listened more.
Distant? I tried, Ariana. How many surprise dates did I plan? How many nights did I reserve for just the two of us, only for you to bail last minute? And every time I understood and gave you the benefit of the doubt. But now you blame me? I stretched myself thin, trying to balance everything, thinking of ways to keep us connected. Yet here we are.
I know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have.
I had known Ariana for 6 years, but at that moment it felt like I didn't know her at all. I was hurt and broken inside. I fell to the ground in shock and disbelief. The pain I felt was worse than that of losing someone. This clearly meant that I wasn't enough for her and she took my love for granted. Tears streamed down her face, pooling on the floor as she knelt.
Please.
I felt numb. I grabbed her hand and held it up to her face, showing our engagement ring.
Did you take this off when you were with him?
My voice trembled, hoping for a reassuring no, but instead she hesitated, then nodded, her gaze never meeting mine.
Yes.
The room spun. The idea that she'd removed the very symbol of our commitment was like a dagger to my heart. It wasn't just a fling. She hid our bond, our future, from him, this stranger in our home. He didn't know, the other guy didn't know, meaning it was all her. I broke down, I needed air and space.
I can't be here,
I whispered, disentangling my hand from hers. I needed distance, I couldn't even look at her. The thought of another man inside my. God, I was shattered. I left the house to take a walk, but all I could think of was where I went wrong. What did I fail to do that made her seek pleasure in another man? It drove me mad that someone who promised to always be by my side would cheat on me at the slightest chance she got. I screamed out, looking like just another crazy fool on the streets. When I returned, she told me she met the guy at her place of work when he came to get something for his sister, and that he had a lot in common with me, and so she couldn't help falling for him. I don't know why, but at this point I felt disgusted.
What do you take me for, Ariana?
I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of hurt and anger. The sheer audacity of her excuses made me question everything I thought I knew about her.
If you felt we were drifting apart, why not come to me? Why run into someone else's arms?
I'm so sorry. I know I messed up.
The betrayal had left me hollow. Every time I looked at her, the pain was blinding.
I need space, time to process, time to decide.
She looked at me, her eyes wide with a mix of panic and understanding.
Okay, but
I held up a hand to silence her. I was done listening.
Just leave, please.
Over the next few weeks, she went above and beyond to prove her remorse. She'd leave voice notes of heartfelt apologies, send handwritten letters, and even showed up at my workplace once with a gigantic apology banner. But no gesture, no matter how grand or earnest, could easily mend the shattered trust. However, there was one that stuck out. One evening, a small parcel arrived at my doorstep. Inside was a scrapbook of our journey from our very first date to our engagement. Every page seemed soaked in her tears and regret. The candid pictures and handwritten notes reminded me of the love we once shared, but that didn't mean forgiveness was instant. I needed more than gestures. I needed time to heal, to figure out if we could ever regain what we had lost. Yet slowly, her persistence began to chip away at the walls I'd built. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I was ready to talk. I told her I would forgive her, but only under the condition that she would break any contact with the other guy. We set boundaries and guidelines, working to rebuild the trust she shattered. It wasn't easy, but the following weeks felt different. She made an effort, and I could see it in every little thing she did. This time, she gave me all the attention I felt I missed. We went out on dates to the museum and amusement parks, and we even to the restaurant I reserved earlier, and the cinema where we got engaged.
But as we recounted that day, I realized something. I didn't trust her anymore like before. The thought of this broke my heart, but I couldn't help it. It wasn't my fault she cheated on me, but I hoped things would soon go back to normal, and I won't have to deal with the fear of losing her again.
Aside from my trust issues, everything else was going on smoothly. Our relationship got stronger, and I started feeling like myself again. But life's got a messed up way of playing games. Just when I'd started to let my guard down, Fred slid into my DMs, turning my world on its head. There she was, Ariana, my everything, holding hands with a guy in a place about 3 hours away from our house. I was enraged. I had never felt so much anger in my life before. Man, I felt like such an idiot, believing things were different, that she had changed. Rookie mistake. Work was impossible. My focus shattered. I took the rest of the day off. As I drove home, fury consumed my every thought. The image of Ariana with that man haunted me. Was she with him, right, Mo? Reaching home, the dam broke. I cried. Every emotion from the past, every shared memory, every ounce of hope for our future, it all seemed like a cruel joke now. I didn't want to stop crying, but I knew I needed to confront her and get my answers. So I waited patiently, and as soon as she got in, I pounced on her. I asked her multiple questions at once while showing her the picture Fred sent me as evidence. The moment that photo flashed before her eyes, her face crumpled in a mix of surprise and guilt. She hesitated, seeming to search for an alibi, then tried to shrug it off.
I haven't been there in ages.
But I wasn't about to let her escape that easily.
Really, Ariana? Because this looks recent and familiar.
Tears began to well in her eyes.
I haven't seen anyone since, you know.
But something in her voice, a tiny waver, gave her away. I was irritated by the fact that I had to mention the first time she cheated on me, like it was a normal thing to do. When she saw that I was serious and wouldn't fall for her tears, she finally confessed that she had never stopped cheating on me. They had been sneaking around and still met up secretly. She mumbled something about being confused, about not wanting to drag me down with her. But honestly, it all sounded like noise. We'd always been open, always shared the big and small moments. If she was lost, why not turn to me?
I was struggling inside my head. I was lost, confused. It felt like everything was falling apart, and I wanted to feel something other than the pain.
So you used them as a distraction?
I thought they'd fill the void, but they never did. I promise, I'll get help. I'll change. I'll be better. Please just...
I was enraged, so enraged that I did something I never imagined I would in a million years. I slapped her. She looked at me, her big, bright, now red eyes almost popping out of their sockets. She was shocked. I was shocked. I hated domestic violence, and everyone around me knew it. My elder sister used to be a victim until she passed from it when I was 15. Never in my life had I ever imagined that I would hit a woman and talk more of the woman I loved. At that moment, I could see the hurt in her eyes, and she looked at me like I was a stranger. But I was too angry to care. She should have thought of everything at stake before throwing herself at another man.
John.
She quivered in disbelief, but I ignored her and went to sit. I called my parents and explained everything to them. They were shocked, to say the least, because they had always taken Ariana like their child and loved her the same way. When I told them I was breaking our engagement, they didn't have much to say. I was done, and I would be damned to be married to a cheat. After talking to my parents, I called hers as well. And just like before, I explained everything to them, and they too were surprised. Ariana and I had always had their blessings to get married, so it was disappointing to learn that their daughter would do such a thing, especially when they knew how much we loved each other. I told them about my plans to break our engagement, and told them to get her things because I wasn't interested in the relationship. They tried to convince me to forgive her, but my mind was already made up. I would never forgive her for treating me like trash. There was nothing they would say that would convince me, and when they realized this, they came to my place to get her things and take her home as well. That night was pure torture for me. I cried like I had never done before. I didn't want to accept that I just lost the woman of my dreams. 2 weeks after the incident, I got the most shocking news of my life. Ariana had unalived herself because I wouldn't take her back. Actually, after we broke up, she stalked the hell out of me. She called so many times begging fur heavily that I forgive her and take her back, and in the evening she would send several texts, telling me how much she loved me and wanted us back together. But this time, I stood my ground and blocked her on all social media platforms. She even went as far as calling my parents to beg, and they tried talking me into accepting her back, but I didn't listen, and I didn't know she would go as far as killing herself for that reason. My mom, who called me to break the news, told me that she had left a letter for her parents apologizing and, most importantly, to me for what she did and how she messed up our lives. She said she couldn't do without me, and there was no way she'd remain living. I didn't take her back. This was a shock to me because, for someone who cheated continuously, that letter was bizarre. The worst part of this whole issue was that everyone blamed me. How was it my fault that she cheated on me? Was I supposed to overlook the entire thing and still get married to her, even at my own risk? She was the one who cheated, not me. If she loved me that much, why did she do it in the first place? But I couldn't help feeling guilty either. Maybe I should have overlooked things. Maybe have taken her back. The guilt ate me up inside and I cried. Even if I was to reconsider things now, she was gone forever, and there was no way we'd be together in this life. I loved her and didn't wish death upon her, but I couldn't do anything about it now. A few weeks after her burial, Fred, my friend who exposed Ariana's cheating, came to console me on her death. Actually, he had been coming around frequently to keep me company and help me heal. He would often tell me that it wasn't my fault she died. Nobody deserves to be with a cheating partner, and it was good I didn't end up with one. Fred and I sat on the balcony staring into the city's distant skyline, accompanied only by the gentle sounds of life around us. He reached out for his drink, taking a slow sip before breaking the silence.
You know, man,
He began, voice low and tinged with pain.
Angela, she wasn't the angel everyone thought she was.
I looked over, realizing he had never truly shared the full depth of his relationship with Angela.
What do you mean?
Fred sighed, looking distant.
Remember a month or so ago when she asked me for some money?
Yeah? And you said your company hadn't paid you yet?
That's right, I mean it was just a temporary setback. But when I told her I was running short, she lost it. Told me I should be out there hunting for a job that paid more, that if we were to get serious, I needed to be the provider. I mean, relationships are about partnership, right? Not just one person carrying the weight.
Exactly.
I said, understanding the weight of the expectations she placed on him. Fred paused, his fingers playing with the rim of his glass.
But the real kicker, one day I grabbed her phone to check the time and there it was. Messages from some New York realtor. Flirty texts, plans to meet up, even shared pictures.
I shook my head in disbelief.
Fred, I'm so sorry. With everything going on, I never realized what you were dealing with too.
He gave a sad smile.
Life's complicated, isn't it? You think you know someone and then...
He let the sentence hang, both of us lost in our own thoughts about love, betrayal, and the unexpected paths life can take. After a while, we laughed at our losses and consoled ourselves. Fred was a good friend because he not only helped me escape Ariana's cheating claws, but also stood by me even after her death. And I was grateful for that. Life went on as usual, and one day Fred told me he was in town and would like us to have beer and pizza at my place. That evening, I had nothing to do, so I agreed to his plans. I went to pick him up from his place of work, and we headed to my apartment after getting the beers and pizza. When we got to my place and started drinking, we reminisced about our old days in college when we were popular and had all the time to hang out and party. Fred talked about how I used to be the champion of drinking, as I barely got drunk even when others were drunk. We laughed about this. I also thought about it and realized I missed those days. I thought about getting loose and giving love a chance again. After drinking more bottles, Fred was already drunk, and I smiled as I looked at him. He was still the same Fred I knew, my old supportive friend. A few minutes later, Fred's phone started ringing. It rang about 10 times before I switched to vibration so it wouldn't disturb us while we were sleeping. When I picked up the phone, I saw that it was Annie, Fred's current girlfriend, calling him. I smiled. She must have thought Fred was passing the night at another woman's place because I was sure he probably didn't mention staying over at my place until I saw a text from her that read, "You're evil, Fred." That caught me off guard. I've always known Annie to be a sweet person, even in cases where she was supposed to be angry. She always remained calm and composed. So it was very weird that she would text her boyfriend something this deep. Why would she call her boyfriend evil because he wasn't with her? I decided to call her with my phone to assure her that her man wasn't cheating. Immediately she picked up my call, she started crying. Now this is where things became even weirder. I tried calming her down as best as possible and told her to talk to me. She started apologizing for what Fred had done to me. I still didn't understand what she was saying, so I told her to explain further. She told me that about a month ago, she asked Fred to lend her his laptop for her project, but weirdly he wouldn't and told her to stay away from it. Initially, she just thought maybe he had some personal stuff, or perhaps he was chatting with someone he shouldn't, until she saw something worse. That evening, she had gone to his house secretly to check the content of his laptop, but what she saw shocked her. At the time, she was looking for clues to an affair. An email kept coming in asking for his balance. She decided to check the mail and saw that Fred had hired a freelance photo editor. What would Fred need the service of a photo editor for? She thought to herself. So she decided to check his picture app, and she got the shock of her life there. There was a photoshopped picture of Ariana, my late ex-fiancé, and a random guy. I was stunned. This was the most shocking thing I had ever heard. Why would Fred Photoshop a picture of Ariana and a random guy and send it to me? What exactly would he gain by doing this? The following day, I got a gun and kept it beside Fred's phone waiting for him to wake up. I was so tense that it took so much self-control for me not to pull the trigger on him as he slept. When he woke up and saw me, he laughed nervously. I could see fear written all over his face. When he saw that I didn't smile a bit, he looked at the table and saw his phone and the gun, and he understood what was happening.
John?
He began, his voice wavering. Without a word, I shoved the photoshopped picture on his phone to him.
What's this, Fred?
My voice was calm, but the rage underneath was unmistakable. He gulped, beads of sweat forming on his forehead.
Did you go through my phone?
I ignored the question.
Did you Photoshop this, Fred? Tell me the truth.
I cocked the gun with deliberate slowness, ensuring he heard every click. The color drained from Fred's face.
John, it's just a picture. Why are you so...
It's not just a picture, Fred.
I snapped.
This picture led to Ariana's death, and it's fake, isn't it?
Okay, yes it is, but you need to understand...
Why?
I yelled. He hesitated.
I met Ariana before you did. I liked her, a lot. But then you came into the picture and she chose you. I couldn't handle it. Watching you two so happy when it should have been me, I wanted to ruin it.
My breathing grew ragged, anger and disbelief swirling inside me.
So you lied about her cheating, just to get back at me? You let her die believing she betrayed me?
This time I didn't control my voice, pointing the gun at his head. Fred's eyes shimmered with tears.
It wasn't just about you. I wanted her too, but I saw her. I saw Ariana with that guy. And after I found out she really was seeing someone else, I tried to catch her in the act, but my damn phone. I didn't have the photo proof, John, so I had to improvise.
He licked his lips, pausing as he measured his next words.
To make sure she believed me, and maybe to have a little leverage, I doctored a photo. Took one from her Facebook and messed around with it. Made it look like she was with some random dude. I thought that by showing her the picture, she'd be so afraid of being exposed that she'd do anything I wanted.
My disgust grew.
You tried to blackmail her into being with you? But why? Why try so hard?
He caught me off, retorting loudly.
I wanted her, John, just once. Told her if she gave in, I'd keep her secret safe. But she turned me down. So I decided that if I couldn't have her, then neither could you.
You tore us apart, Fred, because of your petty jealousy and sick fantasies.
I thought she was playing you, man. I figured if I could tear you two apart, you'd see the truth, that she wasn't right for you. I didn't think it would go this far.
You took away my love, my trust, and the person who meant the world to me. For what? Your twisted sense of right? For your own selfish desires?
Fred looked up, fear in his eyes.
I'm sorry, man. I messed up. I just wanted you to see.
Oh, so now you did it for me? You didn't do it for me, you sick bastard. You did it for your sorry self. You were my brother, Fred, and you betrayed me in the worst way imaginable.
Drawing a deep breath, I stepped back, looking at the broken man before me. What did I do wrong by trusting him? Were friends supposed to stab each other in the back like Fred did to me? My name is John, and this is my story. What do you think I should do? Drop your thoughts in the comments section.